Welcome to this edition of Head to Head. I'm your host, Cam McKinney, and this is episode number 352 of the podcast. And on this episode, I want to talk about Patrick Mahomes losing the Super Bowl. As this comes out, we are weeks past the Super Bowl, and quite frankly, I thought I was done talking about football until next season. But there's one topic that I need to weigh in on, and it's the strong reaction to Mahomes losing in the Super Bowl. People are acting like this is the biggest hit to his career because he lost the Super Bowl. Now he'll never be considered the greatest quarterback of all time. What I'm interested in talking about on this podcast is the idea that many sports fans seem to have, that losing on the biggest stage is the worst thing that can happen for a star athlete. Two northern stars are Joe Montana, who went 4-0 in the Super Bowl, and Michael Jordan, who went 6-0 in the NBA Finals. And what people are so enamored with is this false narrative that these two athletes reach perfection, that they never lost big games. It's like, yes, they were incredibly clutch and obviously played their best during the playoffs. Joe Montana was, however, eliminated from the NFL playoffs 7 times in his career and lost in the championship round 3 different times. But we don't talk about that because we fixate on the Super Bowl. Then in the case of Michael Jordan, it's well documented he had early trouble in the playoffs, especially getting past the bad boy Pistons with Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. Let's talk about their modern counterparts. Tom Brady is 7-3 in the Super Bowl, and we all talk about the fact that he lost twice to the New York Giants. And in the NBA, you have LeBron James, who is currently 4-6 in the NBA Finals, and the losses to the Spurs and the Mavericks loom large in the eyes of basketball fans. In the case of Tom Brady, isn't one of the things that makes him the greatest quarterback of all time the fact that he came back from those losses and won more Super Bowls, and the fact that he won a Super Bowl a decade after not winning one? I like it when athletes bounce back from their big losses, so I don't understand this being viewed as an end for Patrick Mahomes. This could really be a new beginning, because for the first time ever, he's no longer viewed as the best QB in the league. It feels like most would go with either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. One of the reasons Mahomes is getting overly criticizes because he lost to someone who is not viewed as on his level in Jalen Hurts, and Brady lost to Eli Manning and Nick Foles. One thing that really irks me about these kinds of criticisms is that people rewrite history. I mean, you hear a lot of people say, oh, well, Tom Brady would never lose a big game like this one in that fashion. Tom Brady lost big games, and he lost in the Super Bowl 3 times. But why he is Tom Brady is because he overcame those losses. Peyton Manning is still viewed as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, yet he had one of the worst Super Bowl losses of all time to the Seattle Seahawks. I thought that was a brutal loss for Peyton Manning, but it did not change my overall opinion on him because he was Peyton Manning. Too many people with this loss for Mahomes are being prisoners of the moments. You don't know how he is going to react. Maybe Patrick Mahomes is now going to be motivated now more than ever to up his game next season, because look, he was treated like a king for the last few years because the Chiefs were winning Super Bowls, and now people are back to doubting him. That's the type of thing that could really spark him back to being the best quarterback in the league. I thought in his regular season he wasn't that great, but like many people, I thought during the Super Bowl he would play like the Patrick Mahomes who could pass for 50 touchdowns in the regular season, but he was not that guy, and now he has something to prove. And what I really don't know is this a creation of the media where it seems like the only important games are in the championship rounds, or is this how all sports fans actually feel about athletes? Look, it makes sense that Super Bowls and NBA Finals are the most remembered sports moments. They have the most eyeballs on them, but call me crazy, it would have been worse for Mahomes to lose in the first round of the playoffs than to lose in the Super Bowl. Obviously, you want to win. That's what sports are about, but I will never say it's the worst thing to be runner-up. I've watched my basketball team, the Boston Celtics, struggle in the playoffs. They, led by Jason Tatum, lost to the Warriors in the NBA Finals, and last year they won, beating the Dallas Mavericks. Guess what? That win meant more because it shows they grew as players and overcame a big loss, which doesn't always happen. In 2003, the New York Yankees beat the the Boston Red Sox in walk-off fashion, and in 2004, the Boston Red Sox came back from down 3-0, and the loss in 2003 is why fans hold that victory in such high regards. I know it's different because that's a team, and with Mahomes, we are talking about an individual, but let's again talk about Tom Brady. I mean, he lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles and then bounced back and won against the Rams. I understand people don't talk about that win because Brady played well in that loss to the Eagles, but these games are not all about performances. It's about did you win or did you lose? I think it's impressive to make it to 3 straight Super Bowl appearances, and I'm not going to say that Patrick Mahomes is no longer great because he wasn't able to accomplish something that's never been accomplished before, winning 3 straight. And this isn't just the way we talk about just players. We do it with teams as well. 2 in the 90s. The Buffalo Bills went to 4 straight Super Bowls in a row and lost. And while that's not great, let's not pretend like it's not a million times better than a team that didn't make it all the way to the Super Bowl. And in baseball in the 90s, the Atlanta Braves were consistent, making it to the World Series 5 times, but nowadays they are talked about as the team that only won once. I agree with that. That team did not become a dynasty, but the notion that they are failures in any way to me is insane. What we are doing is diminishing the accomplishment of making it to the final rounds of a postseason in any sport. I mean, just this past baseball season, the Dodgers played the Yankees, and so many people acted like the Yankees did not deserve to be in the same building as the Dodgers. Look, the Yankees lost in 5 games. They did not play their best baseball during the World Series. I still think it's impressive that the Yankees made it all the way to the World Series. I still think that's an impressive feat. I will never call a team that made it all to the World Series, the NBA Finals, or the Super Bowl an embarrassment. No matter how bad they lose in that final round, I still see part of the accomplishment getting there in the first place. And I especially feel that way about the NFL. I am not going to let Patrick Mahomes' legacy be defined by one game. This one game was not everything. It wasn't if he wins this one game, he becomes the greatest quarterback of all time, and now that he's lost that game, he's lost out on that opportunity. No, that was not what was lost. I think it was a big loss for Patrick Mahomes. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. I just don't think it's a huge deal that everyone is making it out to be. What's the bigger deal is going to be how he reacts to this loss. Will he remain Patrick Mahomes moving forward? Will he play well into his early and late 30s like Tom Brady did? Because if he does that, that's how he'll become the greatest of all time, or close to the greatest of all time. Maybe it's just me, but I also think that's the most simplifying of sports you can do by saying the best of all time is whoever wins the most. I'm just not that guy. I really do like winners. I think the 3 biggest winners of my lifetime have been Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, and Kobe Bryant, but they were also the best at their sports as well. Like, I really do believe Derek Jeter is one of the best shortstops of all time, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and Kobe Bryant was one of the best basketball players I've ever seen. They all suffered losses. I mean, Derek Jeter was on a team in 2001 that lost in Game 7 to the Arizona Diamondbacks, and in 2003 lost in 6 games in a World Series to the Florida Marlins. Kobe lost in the NBA Finals to the Detroit Pistons and the Boston Celtics. My point is, even the best lose in the championship games, and I know we all love that idea of Joe Montana 4-0 in Super Bowls and Michael Jordan 6-0 in the NBA Finals, but I don't think that that's the measurement we need to hold all of our great athletes to. LeBron James took his basketball game to the next level after that brutal loss to the Dallas Mavericks. He came back the next season and was far and away the best player in all of basketball, including the postseason. He got past his postseason struggles and became way more of a clutch player. He grew from that loss. We got the best version of LeBron James because he suffered what you would call an embarrassing playoff loss. He went from losing to to J.J. Barea and the Dallas Mavericks to beating a stacked OKC Thunder team that included Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Russell Westbrook. I mean, how he reacted is why we now view him as arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. It's my belief that there's no singular loss you can't bounce back from when it's sports. And I know people are being extreme. I know these TV personalities are being extreme on purpose because they just want to hammer home their point. But their point's wrong. I think Patrick Mahomes became a way more interesting figure to follow now on because he's gone through that terrible loss. Look, he lost the Super Bowl before, but that was to Tom Brady. No one mocked him for that. People are saying that he played his worst game ever on the biggest stage. I think that could have a real effect on an athlete, and sometimes it's a great effect. And look, Mahomes isn't the only one being overly criticized on the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, the hate that Travis Kelce is getting is insane. I mean, I was seeing on TV the very next day, should he retire? Should it be over because he's no longer that guy? I mean, that's how extreme people are when it comes to these playoff losses on the biggest stage. Like, you wouldn't have had any of this talk if they had lost in the first round, but because they lost in the Super Bowl, it's the end of the world. And it's because the media set up this narrative where if the Chiefs win, Mahomes becomes the greatest quarterback of all time and Andy Reid becomes the greatest head coach of all time. But because that didn't happen, now both of them are just washed up. I think that is an insane way to think about sports. I don't think they come down to one game. I know it's hard to think like that because we're watching these games in the moment, but I really do think about the long term, and I think about what is Patrick Mahomes' career going to look like at the end, and I don't have the answer to that. So I'm just going to sit here, watch it, enjoy it. It's interesting. Yes, it's not great that Patrick Mahomes lost the Super Bowl in the way that he did, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's going to be able to bounce back. In fact, I'm betting on it because I'm one of those people who think that if Patrick Mahomes were to ever rival Tom Brady, he would have to be able to bounce back from these big losses and to play super well into his late 30s and possibly early 40s. I was on board with most people. I wanted to see another team win other than the Chiefs, but people take it too far when they say things like Mahomes will never have another opportunity to be considered the best quarterback of all time. Yes, being 4-0 in the Super Bowl and 6-0 in the NBA Finals is really cool, but as a fan, do I really want to root for someone who doesn't lose in the big games and doesn't have that bounce back moment? As somebody who is a fan of Jason Tatum, it was really cool to see him last year get over the hump of being a playoff performer. I even think about Alex Rodriguez. For years and years was viewed as a guy who doesn't get the job done during the playoffs, and then in 2009 helps the Yankees win a World Series and is arguably their best player during that postseason. I like it when a player doesn't do well in the postseason, bounces back, and then plays at their best. I'm okay if you're down on Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback right now, but not for the sole reason that he lost that game in that fashion. Like, give me another reason. Give me, because he wasn't as good during the regular season as Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. I mean, that's a football reason. Maybe you think Patrick Mahomes is no longer the elite quarterback he was early on. That's a legit reason. Him losing this one game, I don't think that's enough to get over the bandwagon. And look, maybe this will end up being a vital loss in his career. Maybe this will be the end of the Mahomes run, but you don't know that yet. Let the entire picture play out the way that Tom Brady's entire career played out. I'm sure most of you were done with Brady after he lost the first Super Bowl to the Giants and then the second one as well, but then he bounced back and won 3 more times with the Patriots and then won another one with a second team. Look, do I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to wind up winning 8 Super Bowl titles and surpassing Tom Brady as the greatest ever? No, but it's not because of that one loss to the Philadelphia Eagles where, yes, the Chiefs played bad. I somewhat understand having such a strong reaction to Mahomes losing this Super Bowl because it was so unexpected. I mean, nobody thought he was going to play that poorly in the biggest game because we've all seen him play so well in the big moments. offense. The fact is, he didn't have it on Super Bowl Sunday, but it does not mean you have to completely write him off. I guess what I'm really saying is I don't think the greatest of all time is the guy who's won 7 times in the championship round and never lost. I view it as the guy who goes through the ups and downs of being a professional athlete, gets through the big losses, and just remains super consistent throughout their entire career. And then I look at the end of their careers and I go, wow, this guy really was it. And you can see that with Tom Brady, and maybe someday you will say the exact same thing about Mahomes. A cool thing about this past Super Bowl is the Chiefs, a team that lost to Patrick Mahomes during the Super Bowl, recovered by winning this game. I mean, they bounced back. They did the very thing I'm talking about, and I think that's almost cooler than beating them twice. I especially get annoyed talking about Super Bowl rings when it comes to quarterbacks. I get it. They're the most important position in football, and they're the ones who we give the credit and the blame when the team wins. Patrick Mahomes was a big reason that the Chiefs lost that Super Bowl, but the Chiefs' defense was also really bad against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the Eagles were doing absolutely everything they wanted to do. The hard thing about rating individuals for winning, and we all do it, is that we're talking about team sports. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is relying on a team. All the other guys I've been talking about relied on a team. Michael Jordan went 6-0 in the NBA Finals because he was playing with the likes of Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Horace Grant. There were a lot of really good basketball players on that team as well. And then with the 49ers, I mean, that team was stacked. Joe Montana was playing with Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver of all time. I mean, these individual players who were perfect in these championship rounds were also playing with all-time great players. I'm with most people. I'm down on the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl next season, but I am not down on Patrick Mahomes. I still view him as one of the best quarterbacks in all of football. He's still an all-time quarterback. He's going to end up in that top 5 when it's all said and done, and still believe there's a chance that he could catch Tom Brady again. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but if I'm going to give anyone a chance, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. What's truly bizarre to me, and I really do believe this, that people would have gone easier on Mahomes if he had lost a close football game the week before to Josh Allen in the AFC Championship game than losing a blowout in the Super Bowl. And I think the goal should always be to go as far as you can go. It should never be a bad thing to lose a Super Bowl, even if it's a blowout. It can never be worse than losing in the AFC title game. But in reality, people don't remember AFC title games. I mean, sometimes they're great and they go to overtime and they're great games, but the games that we remember, the ones that we talk about, are Super Bowls, are NBA Finals games. Those are the games that get remembered. Those are the games that build or destroy an entire player's legacy. And while at the end of the day, it's hard to feel bad for Patrick Mahomes because he's become a guy who's viewed as one of the greatest of all time because he's already won 3 Super Bowls, I do kind of feel bad for him because I don't think that losing in the Super Bowl is that big of a deal. What's a big deal is how he's going to react to this loss moving forward. I'm intrigued to see how well he plays next regular season because I wasn't that impressed with the Mahomes that we got during this past regular season. He didn't throw for 30 touchdowns. He wasn't an MVP caliber quarterback this past year. I think he could become one again, and I think this loss to the Eagles is going to motivate him to get there. And I do believe it's too early to say it's the end of the Chiefs dynasty. They still have Andy Reid, the best offensive play caller in all of football, and they still have Patrick Mahomes, a 3-time Super Bowl champion. I bet Travis Kelce is going to be back despite everyone's feelings about him. I know we're never going to get there, but as a society, I just wished we talked about playoff losses in a different way. The way we talk about teams that lose in the Super Bowl and the NBA Finals, the way we talk about individuals that lose in those rounds, I just don't like it. But sadly, I don't think it's going away. Losing in the Super Super Bowl is a bad thing. I just don't think it's the worst thing that could have happened to Patrick Mahomes. It would have been worse for him to lose in the first round or the AFC title game. I mean, the guy did make it to a third straight Super Bowl appearance. That is an accomplishment whether you like it or not. It's fair to say I would have been annoyed if Mahomes was overpraised for winning the game against the Eagles, but I am annoyed by him being over-criticized. I don't think it's fair. I think it's a tough loss. I think he played his worst game of the season, but the guy still made it to the Super Bowl, and that should count for something. And as for all the legacy talk, it's too early. The story of Patrick Mahomes is still being told. Thanks for listening to this edition of Head to Head. I'm Cam McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so please rate, review, and subscribe.